welcome back to my channel and welcome to today's video, which is one of my favorites, one of your favorites as well. It is a yoga teacher Q&A, yoga teacher advice video. I really love making these, so I'm very happy to be back with you talking all things yoga teaching. It's my passion, it's my love. Just so happy to be here. For those of you that are new here, my name is Amara. I am a full-time yoga teacher. You can see me an awful lot online. I have a few flows here, but I also have my online membership, Soul Shallow, where all of my online yogis come and flow with me. I also have led yoga teacher trainings in the past. I run my own yoga teacher mentorship where I help teachers create online businesses and create their business within yoga, and also really focusing on ownership at the moment with those yoga teacher mentorship clients and those groups. What else do I do? I also host a lot of women's circles, and just all things the soul is very much my vibe as a yoga teacher. But I also really do have a passion for business and yoga business. It is something that I have spent so much time studying and learning about and trying to learn about to relate to my own business, and I just absolutely love now being able to share this with other teachers. And as I said, the main way that I tend to do that is through my yoga teacher mentorship, which is now live, so I'll actually put the details below and I'll chat about it a little bit later in the video. But without further ado, let's dive straight into some yoga teacher questions, yoga teacher advice. I did actually ask you guys on Instagram what were your biggest questions, and I really love doing these because you guys come up with so many good ones, and I also feel like these are really common questions. So some of these questions I know I've covered before, gonna cover them again, but sort of my most frequently asked and some of your questions as well. Okay, first question. This is the most commonly asked question, so I'm just gonna pop it in there. This is, I just passed my 200-hour course on Sunday. Any tips for landing an in-studio job as a yoga teacher? So common. I get this question all the time. Now, working in studios is fantastic, especially for new teachers. It is a really beautiful way to gain experience, to gain confidence. And I would say that the best way to approach beginning to work in studios is, first of all, try lots of different studios in your area, see which ones you feel fit your teaching style. And this is something that I recommend you try and get clear on quite early within your teaching is, what is my style? Am I more philosophical? Am I more anatomical? What's important to me as a teacher? What are my values? And then thinking from that, okay, what studios align with this? Because you really want it to be a partnership there as well. Once you maybe have identified the studios that you want to work with, the best thing you can do is become a part of their community. So go along to classes, become a member, make sure you're there, and then speak to them. You can say, I'm a new yoga teacher, I'd love to cover a class. Now, asking if you can join their cover list is a really fantastic way to kind of get a foot in the door with teaching in studios, because whilst they might not be looking for new teachers, they're always looking for cover teachers. So getting onto a studio's cover list is a really beautiful way. And if you ever get then called for a cover class, doing everything you physically can to be there. I know I have given this advice in so many videos before, and it's quite controversial advice, but it was not unheard of when I was making the transition from my 9 to 5, I guess, I was a school teacher, into wanting to teach yoga. I would pull a sickie if I had a cover class. And I know that sounds really irresponsible, but in those moments I was really thinking, what is in most alignment with my future? Is it the life I'm in now or the life I want to be in as a yoga teacher? And making sure I could do everything physically possible to be at those cover classes was my priority, because they eventually led to permanent slots and they proved that I was reliable, they proved that I was good, and I needed that experience at the end of the day. So that is really what I would recommend when it comes to studio classes as a new teacher. I would also say, and I feel like this isn't shared a lot within the yoga community, is studio classes are not everything. They're amazing. I love teaching in studio. They're not everything, and you are going to find it really, actually no, I'm not going to say you're going to find it really hard, but it's not the way that I would personally choose to structure my yoga business with lots of studio classes. The reason for this is you're very likely to get burnt out, and they are the lowest paid work. So I would always really encourage to think outside the box of just teaching in studio, because there's also not a lot of ownership of your work in that way. And again, this is something I talk about so much within my yoga teacher mentorship course, because we really want to create businesses rather than, I guess, this freelancer mindset of teaching lots of studio classes, which is amazing. There's nothing wrong with that. But the burnout that tends to come, and I see so many teachers facing this burnout, and that's when they really sort of want to scale back and think about how can I be a yoga teacher who's not burnt out and who's not running around from studio to studio. So as you've just qualified, I want to put that out there, because if you can do that from the beginning and create a sustainable yoga business from the beginning, you're going to be doing so well in the long run. So I'm putting that there for you. Let's move on to the next question. Oh, I really love this one. So the next question is, how do you know if you're meant to teach yoga? And I love this question. I think that this is probably a question a lot of people ask themselves, whether it's before yoga teacher training, whether it's after their yoga teacher training, and they're like, am I meant to teach, or did I just do this for fun? And first things first, is only you are going to know if you feel as if you're meant to be a yoga teacher. And also there is an element of, it might be what's right for you right now, and it might not be what's right for you forever as well. So it might be something that you try and you do and it leads you on to something else. So I also always feel the need to say that. But when it comes to knowing whether or not this is the path for you, that's going to come from your intuition. That's going to come from what feels right in you. Some people will start teaching yoga and it will lead them on a completely different path, and they might start doing coaching, or they might start doing energy healing, or maybe they do Pilates or physiotherapy, whatever it might be. Whereas there are some of you and some people who will come to teaching yoga and it will feel like coming home. And I can say this because I know that's how it felt for me. It feels like this coming home to who you are. It feels like this, there's nowhere else I was meant to be, and it's just become so much a part of your purpose. It lights you up. You feel like there's nothing else that could quite take its place. And I think in that moment, you know that yoga is something you probably want to be doing long term, and it probably is a big part of your dharma and your purpose. And I'd say those moments where it lights you up and you feel like you could really spend the rest of your life doing this, not necessarily that you have to, but that you could, are the moments where you probably know that it's right for you, even if it's just right in that moment and maybe not forever. But I know for so many it is right for forever, and I know for me that it is. So yeah, I hope that helps in knowing when you're, or if you're meant to be a yoga teacher. But trust me, you're going to feel it within you as well. Moving on, the next question, I actually had a few questions about sequencing, so I'm going to go over this a little bit. Now, for those of you who maybe haven't flowed with me before, sequencing is something I'm so passionate about. I love creating creative sequences. I love creating classes that are fluid and really quite creative and dynamic as well. So sequencing is something I am particularly passionate about, and I know that a lot of new teachers can find this really, really hard. Now, the key to sequencing is getting on your mat. The key to sequencing is beginning to develop what I would call intuitive flow. Now, what I mean by intuitive flow is, can you roll out your mat without a plan and just begin to move? And at first this might feel really hard, this idea of just rolling out your mat and moving around your mat. And if this does feel really hard to begin with, I would always encourage you to kind of start with something basic like Sun Salutation A, Surya Namaskara A, Surya Namaskara B. Start with them and then get a little creative. See where you want to change things up. See what movement feels good. I think when I find that there are maybe newer teachers that struggle with sequencing, there's often a disconnect between the body and the emotions. Now, this is going quite deep, and depth is something I love as a yoga teacher, so bear with me, but the body really, really does hold emotions, and it really, really does hold feeling, right? And when we have this disconnect between how we feel and how we move, you're really going to struggle to move intuitively, and inherently you're then going to struggle to sequence in this more creative way. How does it feel to move? How does it feel to move in a way that feels like love? How does it feel to move in a way, and I know this is quite abstract, but how does it feel to move in a way that is internal? How does external feel? So I'm going to give you some examples here. So for me, if I'm moving in a way that's very internal, my eyes are often closed. I'm quite often moving through a lot of spinal waves. It's continuous movement. It's fluid. There's a lot of head rolls. There's a lot of wiggles. That's very intuitive movement for me. That's very internal movement for me. When emotionally I feel internal, that's what my practice looks like. External movement for me might be arm balances and handstands and those more fiery, powery postures, and that feels very external for me. And then when I come onto the mat and want to flow intuitively, the emotions and the movement begin to connect. And this is like your first step to beginning to sequence a little bit more creatively. And I would really encourage, just develop that movement on the mat, because you will find that you're flowing, you've got some music on, you're just moving in a way that feels good, and you're gonna find new spaces, you're gonna find new movements that feel good. And that is truly where everything comes from when I'm doing my creative classes, is just this intuitive movement and seeing what feels good in the body. Another thing I would say, that if you're looking for inspiration, is try other teachers' classes. If you're looking for someone who likes to teach a very creative and intuitive flow, try one of my online classes, or try another teacher's class that you like the style of. Now, I always caveat this with saying is you're never going to be that teacher, because that's not actually where your power is, right? You want to be the teacher that is authentically you, and you want to be the teacher that you know you can be. But with that being said, when it comes to the poses that are being taught, I am a firm believer, and this is my opinion, is that there is nothing new in this practice of yoga asana. Yoga asana has been around for hundreds and thousands of years. It's been here for longer than many of us can even comprehend. And these postures that we see and the variations that we see, they're nothing new. There's a limited amount of postures at the end of the day, and there's going to be a teacher somewhere that has done them before you, right? And that's fine, right? It's not the poses that make the teacher. And let me tell you, this is something I so firmly believe. It is not the poses that make the teacher. You could teach the exact same class that I've taught, and it wouldn't feel like an Amara class. And the reason for that is it's not about the poses you teach, it's about the way you make people feel, right? So the energy that you have when you're teaching is what's really important. So if you go and you magpie and borrow things off other teachers, give credit if the opportunity's there, but also know that that's okay. Bring it into your own style of teacher and make it your own, rather than just copying them. I hope that makes sense. And then a natural question that sort of came on after this is, how do I remember my flows, and how do I sequence and write these things down, and I guess record them? Now, again, I'm going to caveat this with saying and this won't be shocking because I know this is very common in the world of yoga, is I am a very type B person. I am quite creative, quite intuitive. I'm not the person to create A to B plan or A to Z plan. That's not me. I really love creating space for the intuition to come through, and my best classes are usually not written down completely. Now, with that being said, I do find it helpful to jot a few things down for my favorite classes. Sometimes this is done before, most of the time it's done retrospectively. I teach a really great class, I'm like, oh, I loved that, I want to write it down so I can teach it again. And now I do have a book for this. I have a special book which is all of my flows and meditations and mantras, and I put it in that very special book, which I absolutely love. And what I tend to do when I am planning a class is I start out with the theme for the class. Now, the theme could be anything. I try to personally, because of my style of teaching, my theme is never physical. It's not back bends, it's not headstands, it's not arm balances. For me, that's not a theme, that's a pose, and I'm excluding people very quickly with that, because, for example, if my theme is to get everyone to do a headstand and I walk into the class and someone can already do it, they're not going to benefit from that class. So I don't tend to work with asana or pose themes. That's not really what I mean by a theme. What I mean by a theme is the way in which I want to make people feel, or the feeling I'm trying to invoke, the intention almost. So a theme for me might be surrender, it might be inner strength, it might be the heart chakra, it might be a heart opening, it might be connecting to your intuition, it could be flowing and letting go, it could be the water element, the fire element, so many different things, but it's more broad than just a pose. So quite often I will decide on a theme, and for me personally, I like to just jot down a few sentences on why I've chosen this theme and what I want to share. And I tend to share this at the beginning of most classes, of why we're flowing with this theme and what I'm hoping students will take from it. And then I also might jot down the intention for that class, and I always share intentions. Intentions are a huge thing for me when teaching and practicing yoga, because I just feel like the practice of yoga is always going to be taken deeper when it has an intention. Energy flows where intention goes. So you gotta have that intention. And then I will sometimes jot down poses that go well with this theme. So for example, if I was teaching, my theme was feeling good. I love that as a theme. It's one I actually taught very recently on Soul Shower, my online membership. But this idea of feeling good, what poses make me feel good? Well, dancer's pose is a feel good pose for me. And just like fluid movement and feeling like I know where I'm going is a really feel good moment for me. So things like warrior two to reverse warrior and things like this. So I might jot down a few of those poses there, but I'm not really writing much more than that. Then once I'm jotting this down, I'm on my mat flowing. I am moving, I'm feeling it. If I feel like this is something I'm going to forget, I will also record myself doing just a few bits of the flow, not necessarily the whole thing. Usually it's for me, it's the standing sequence that I'll tend to video, because that's the bit where my creativity really shines through the most. It does come through in the seated, but I find that easier to remember as it's a slower pace. So I might just film my standing sequence to make sure that I've got it there so that I can refer back to it. Okay, very long answer. So we're going to quickly move on to the next question. Okay, I love this next question. I feel like a lot of people will have felt this or might feel this. I know that I have felt this, especially very recently. So I really love that I'm now able to share it with you. But how to deal with judgment from non-yogic people after leaving the corporate world. So this, I guess I'm sort of thinking like you're moving into maybe wanting to teach yoga or practicing yoga, and the people in your life are maybe not in seeing the same vision as you, and you're worried about the judgment that may come because you feel as if what you're talking about is a little bit woo-woo or a little bit sort of out of touch with what it was before. Now, first things first is we need to acknowledge that when we have started teaching yoga, or whether we've started practicing yoga, and when we've taken that leap to decide we want to do our yoga teacher training, or maybe we've just finished our yoga teacher training, whether you like it or not, you have changed. And this is something that I actually really struggled to grapple with. Like when people said I changed, I was like, no, I haven't, I'm still me. And in a lot of ways I was still me, I am still me, I always will still be me. But the truth of the matter is that you have changed. You probably brought to yoga or yoga teacher training due to a trauma or a change or something that triggered you to end up in that space of wanting to become a teacher or wanting to explore yoga deeper. And usually from that, throughout our yoga teacher training or throughout the practice of yoga, we've then gained the opportunity to heal parts of ourselves and to grow from spaces that felt painful in the past. And through that we've changed and we've grown, and it might mean that we've changed in the sense of we now have a slightly more positive outlook on life. We might be ready to share our voice and be seen and to step into our light. It might be that we have boundaries now and we no longer have the tolerance for the things that we've used to. But what I'm saying to you is that maybe that person was always within you, but on the outside you have changed, and the way in which you're going to be seen by people may begin to change depending on how you share that, right? Especially if you're going to start sharing on social media or whatever it might be. Yeah, you have changed. Even if you don't like it, you've changed. And that is okay. We are meant to. We are meant to change. We are meant to change. I can't stress this enough. It's part of life. It's part of growth. And I guarantee the change that has happened to you through yoga is probably taking you closer to your truest and highest self anyway. So it's all good change as well. And when it comes to dealing with judgment, I'm going to give you the sad truth that some of it's going to be unavoidable. You know, like when it comes to what's happened to you through your change, as your vibrations shifted, and where you may have been here before when you were maybe working your corporate job, your vibration has shifted to here, right? And you are no longer in alignment with some of the people that were here. That's okay. You don't have to be. People come into your life to serve you and to help you in certain moments, and they can also leave in certain moments, and that's totally okay. And that is going to be the case for some people, and that's absolutely fine. And we have to just trust that, you know what, we can let them go, and it's for the highest and for the best. With that being said, that is not going to be everyone. That is not going to be everyone. You are going to inspire so many people around you without even realizing it. So for the amount of people that don't resonate with you anymore, don't get it, and they are no longer necessarily with you on the journey, you are going to have the same amount of people who are so inspired by you They will see where you came from because you can relate to them, and they will see, oh gosh, like she was like me, she works in a corporate environment and now she's doing this. You're going to inspire them, and you might think, oh gosh, what are they thinking? But in reality, most of the time they're going to be thinking, oh my god, that's amazing, right? And I know that in the moment it can feel really, really scary, but you have no idea, and I didn't know until I started sharing this, until I started my business as a yoga teacher, the amount of messages from people I've got being like, I'm so inspired by what you've done, and it's from the people I least expected. So just know that for the amount of people that may no longer resonate with you, there's going to be an equal amount of people who are so inspired by you. And a little bit of advice that I also got given recently around this, and I think might be helpful for you guys too, is when it comes to that feeling that you've changed and maybe no longer feeling in alignment with people that you once used to. First of all, no one's done anything wrong. There's no one in the wrong. There is just this element of it's part of life, and how can you just allow life to move through you? That's very yogic, I know, but how can you simply just experience it for what it is and practice non-attachment to it? Trust that it's for the highest good. Trust that they were in your life for a reason and they gave you the lessons that you needed, and give them all of the love that they need to move on to the next chapter that you may no longer be in as well. And I know that sounds so yogic, and I know it sounds really challenging, but I know that that really, really helped me, of just feeling the feels, letting them move through me and trusting it's for the highest good. Really going to be asked to step into trust and surrender in this line of work as a yoga teacher, and that's probably going to be one of your very first sort of, not tests, because I don't believe the universe tests us, but maybe one of your first challenges with that. Okay, lots of YouTube questions, which I love, because although here I feel like our community is still small, we are growing, and you guys are honestly some of my favorite people to connect with, and YouTube is my favorite platform, and I really love what is slowly building here. I'm very grateful and also very proud of it as well, because it's a big one. So let me chat to you all about starting to post on your YouTube as a yoga teacher. First things first was tips on how to start a YouTube channel. Just start. You just got to start. It's not going to be perfect to begin with. You just need to start. Start right now, make it right now. No, watch the end of this video and then make it. But you've just got to start, and you know those first few videos are not going to be perfect. You're going to look back at them and be like, oh my god, what was I doing? But you've got to get through the awkward to get to the point where it feels really, really good. Another question around this, because I got a few questions on YouTube for yoga teachers, is all the equipment I use for filming online classes. I have an entire other video on that, so I'm going to link that down below, of how I film my online classes and the equipment that I use and everything like that. So that is linked down below. Another question was like, what do you do when you first start YouTube as a yoga teacher? And this is quite a big question, because as a yoga teacher, YouTube is part of my marketing as a yoga teacher. I'm never the one to deny that I love YouTube. YouTube is so much fun, and I do love posting on it, but I do also use it as a little bit of marketing for me within my yoga business. And this is something that you will need to be really strategic about. So you need to have in mind, what are your values, who are your soul students, and what do they need to see? And this is something, again, that we go into in so much depth on my yoga teacher mentorship, because for example, if your soul students are slightly older and maybe you're doing yoga for injuries for people that are older, or maybe they are maybe they're like Gen Z and they're really young, YouTube might not be the best platform for you. If you are wanting to sort of connect with a certain type of person, you need to make sure that that person is on YouTube. I often use this with the case of like TikTok for yoga teachers. If your ideal client is 30, 40, 30s we're on. I know that they're on TikTok, but if they're like in their 40s and maybe they have a little bit more expendable income or whatever it might be, your ideal client's probably not on TikTok. They're probably on Instagram or even Facebook with that slightly older generation. So first things first is make sure that YouTube is the right space for you to reach your soul students, and you're only going to know that when you know your values as a teacher and when you know sort of what it is you're wanting to create as a teacher. Once you feel like YouTube is the right place, because it is a lot of work and probably a little bit of an investment if you're going to get yourself a camera and stuff, once you know that YouTube is the right space, then really think about, well, what is it that my students want to see? And these are imaginary students maybe to begin with, that's fine. What is it that they want to see? What kind of classes do they want? And what also do you want to share? So I know that there are a lot of teachers on YouTube who just share yoga classes. That's perfect. I personally love sharing a little bit more. I share a lot about spiritual wellness here because that is something I'm really passionate about. My focus as a yoga teacher is yoga, but it's also soul work. I work with the soul and I work with your soul wellness and soul guidance and really wanting you to connect deeper. If we're thinking mind, body and soul, I'm really here for the soul aspect of it, and of course the mind body comes too, but that soul work, it's why my online membership is called Soul Shadow. I really want to work sort of more deeply with students, so that really helps me connect with those students, is sharing some of that deeper stuff here on YouTube as well. So that is a really short sort of answer there, and there is so much I could share here, but it could be an entire video in itself. But I guess the first thing would sort of be is make sure that your soul students are on YouTube. Make sure that you know what students it is that you want to be attracting, and then think about what content do they want to see. If they just want classes, just share classes. If they might be interested in other things, start to think about what other things they may be interested in. The best little bit of advice I can sort of give here for you is do your own thing. Don't necessarily worry about what everyone else is doing, and that can be really stressful, because I think when we first start sort of using social media as a yoga teacher and wanting to maybe use it as our marketing, we look to other teachers to see what they're doing and see how it's working, which is so helpful, absolutely, but also just making sure that it doesn't stop you from sharing in your authentic self. And I know that that's definitely got in my mind in the past. It's like, oh, I should be doing things this way because that looks like it works, when in reality the things that work for when I was just being me and when I was just really tuning into what it is that I love sharing and the students that I love teaching, and trusting that when I share in alignment with that, they are going to find it. Really long answer there, but I really hope that one helps. Okay, how to bring in clients as a brand new teacher renting a space. Okay, I love this. I love that you're renting a space. Very good business decision there. Love that for you. Okay, bringing in new clients as a new teacher is hard. I'm not gonna lie. It's not, your first class is not gonna be full. It might be. It very well might be. But if it isn't, you're not doing anything wrong, is what I'm saying. And I know it can feel really tempting that if, for example, you rent out the space for the first time and no one shows up, you're like, oh, I've made a loss, I don't want to do this again. You have to stick with it. Students respond to consistency. So okay, maybe you've advertised it and someone's seen it and gone, oh yeah, I'm busy this weekend, I'll be there next weekend. Maybe you've advertised it and they've gone, oh, I'm really busy this month, but I'll come next month. If you're then not doing it next month because you felt like no one was going to come, you've then lost out on clients. So the biggest first bit of advice is consistency. Keep the time consistent, keep the place consistent, and keep showing up even when no one's there. I know it's hard, but we've got to keep showing up. We've got to keep being here even when we feel like no one can see it. Second thing I would say is think about how you're marketing that class. So if it's in your local community, you may want to put flyers in a local cafe or at the supermarket or whatever it might be. Think about how you can really outreach to your local community. Another really good way to do this is through Instagram ads as well. I find that Instagram ads or even Facebook ads, whatever you feel, I guess what age group are in your area and the classes you're thinking of teaching would depend which social media you choose. But when it comes to ads, you can really specify it to a local area, which I love, and I find that they are really great for helping you to fill like local classes. So that is another little tip that I would recommend. Another really good thing to do, one of the best ways to attract new clients, is through word of mouth. So creating incentives with your students to share about your classes. So whether it is that you can bring a friend for free, or if you bring a friend you get a free class, or whatever it might be, word of mouth is always really amazing, especially in more localized communities. So I'd really encourage you to think of what incentives you can create in terms of encouraging people to share about your classes too. Okay, we are getting through. These videos are always so long, so if you're still here, thank you for bearing with me. I'm going to answer just 2 or 3 more and then we are going to call it a day. The next question was, I'm a bit scared of not having enough creativity for my classes. What if they feel all the same? First things first is no one remembers your classes like you do. So first things first is they're not necessarily going to remember it. The second thing I would kind of say is I think we're so worried about everything being new and being fresh and not repeating anything, but actually my question would be why? I'd imagine this is probably coming from sort of an insecurity you have as a teacher as not being enough, because the truth of the matter is that students like things to feel somewhat familiar. So you can only really see yourself improving if you're given the same test twice, right? So if I only do half splits once and then I don't do it for another 6 weeks, I'm not going to really see improvement, right? Whereas if there are some poses, for example, that come up in your classes often, or certain sequences that come up in your classes often, like sun salutations. I love sun salutations. I was trained in Ashtanga Vinyasa, so I will always come back to sun salutations. It's within me. But I will say that, you know, if, for example, the sun salutations, the reason they're so great is because people know them and people feel comfortable with them. If you want your students to begin to start flowing with the breath, for example, and begin to move a little bit more and taking more ownership of their practice, then finding familiarity in your classes and noticing that things are similar actually gives them permission to begin to move a bit more, rather than having to focus on every single word because everything's different and a little bit clunky and doesn't quite flow because they don't feel like they know where they're going. You develop flow through getting comfortable and beginning to trust your intuition with flowing, and you do that by creating, I guess, familiarity, but also a safe space there of like, oh, I know her classes because I've come to them a few times now and I know the sort of style I can expect. If, for example, someone comes to your class and they think they know what they're getting and then they get something different, students don't quite know where they stand in terms of your classes. And think about your favorite teachers. I know the teachers that I go back to over and over and over again, they teach pretty much the same class every time. And the reason for that is, and the reason I keep paying to go to their classes, because I love their classes and I can trust I'm going to get the same thing or very similar things again. I've had students come up to me and said, Amara, you're going to teach the same class at another studio later today because I'm going to come to it again because I loved it so much. I wouldn't need a different class. I want to come and do the same class. So trust me, repetition is a good thing as a teacher. So do not worry about things needing to be so different. The other little bit of advice I would give for this is stop worrying about the poses. You can make a class different with its theme. So if I were to teach you a certain class and the theme was surrender, I could teach you the exact same class and the next day the theme could be strength, and I'm focusing on different things. Maybe I'm slowing down the chaturangas. Maybe I am taking time for you to really focus on finding strength within the body in that moment. Whereas the day before, I've been asking you to use the breath to release, and I've been asking you to close down the eyes and let energy through the body, whatever it might be. So hopefully that makes sense for you. Another question was yoga bag essentials and must-haves. I have created a video on my favorites as a yoga teacher, so I'm going to link that down below. Also, in one of my most recent vlogs, I did also do a what's in my bag with me when I go to teach a corporate yoga class, and that's very much the same as when I would go and teach most classes. So I'm going to link those 2 below as well if you want to catch up with them. Our last question here, and I really love this question, and it is how to go from being an all-out gym goer into a yoga teacher. Now, this is a really niche question, but I love it because little do many of you probably know here, but once upon a time, I was a gym girl. I was such a gym buddy. I think I thought about becoming a personal trainer at one point. It was short-lived. But I was such a gym girl, and there's nothing wrong with being a gym girl. There's nothing wrong with it. I think it's fantastic, so good for you, whatever it might be. First things first, I guess, I walked into a yoga class, fell in love. That was definitely my first step. But I'd imagine if you're asking me this question, you've probably had that same experience of walking into a yoga class, falling in love, and maybe what you're actually beginning to want to toy with, which I think is probably the biggest change from sort of that gymmy lifestyle to the yogic lifestyle, because yoga is a lifestyle, we know this, probably is that feeling of yoga being a lifestyle and it feeling so different to the gym lifestyle. And what I would say is first things first, the real differences you're going to see there is where one is very regimented. You may be counting macros, you may be, I don't know, tracking your calories, tracking your workouts, whatever it might be. That's very gymmy. That's very regimented. That's very masculine. The yogic lifestyle is very, very different. The yogic lifestyle is inherently a little bit more balanced, because that was the union is the idea of yoga. But I think a lot of people will find the yogic lifestyle inherently a little bit more feminine. And the reason for that is there's a little more emphasis on intuition. So whether that means you begin to practice intuitive eating, whether that means that your movement is a little bit more intuitive. So whereas the gym goer and the gym girl, I'm not saying I might still go to the gym every once in a while, but it's more the mindset shift I think we're talking about here. Whereas the gym goer is, I must go to the gym, anything's better than nothing, I'll rest when I'm dead, you never regret a workout, whatever it might be. I'm trying to think, whilst that is very much the rhetoric within that sort of gym atmosphere, it's the complete opposite with yoga. Yoga is very much about what feels good, what's intuitive, knowing when you need to practice discipline and push yourself, but also knowing when your body needs rest. So for example, for a lot of women, the practice of yoga encourages them to live a little bit more with their menstrual cycle, and maybe they're not doing a really intense power yoga sculpt on their first day of their menstruation and the first day of their moon cycle, and that is so important for hormone health, first things first. Whereas the gym goer is probably doing a HIIT workout on that first day because they're feeling bloated, which honestly the thought of that stresses me out a little bit now, but I know I was that person, which is just nuts. I guess the biggest thing as well is that nervous system regulation that comes within the practice of yoga. So I think the first thing I would say when it comes to shifting away from, I guess, that more gymmy lifestyle into a more yogic lifestyle, and then eventually wanting to be a yoga teacher, who I really do feel as yoga teachers, we are kind of the poster children for a yogic lifestyle, and we should really be teaching from an embodied space of practicing what we preach, right? And a yoga lifestyle is going to look different for everyone. There's no like right or wrong yogic lifestyle necessarily, but I think you get what I mean here. I guess the first thing is going to be to practice more yoga. Easy one, right? Practice more yoga, be around teachers that inspire you. So be around teachers that you feel really embody yogic lifestyle first of all, because you're going to soak up so much from them. But second of all, I would see, what are the obstacles between you and living a little bit more intuitively here? And this could be intuitive eating, this could be intuitive movement. Why is it that you feel like on the first day of your moon cycle, you need to go and do a HIIT workout? And usually the reason for that is coming from a space of not feeling enough. Now, this is not everyone. This is not everyone. I'm just saying this from what I know a lot of people experience. So if this isn't resonating for you, don't worry. But usually when we are pushing ourselves to the absolute extreme and tracking everything and feeling like it needs to be so regimented, is because quite often we feel like we're not enough in any shape or form. Maybe it is the way we look isn't enough and we want that to change. Maybe it is that we feel like we don't have enough control, so we are creating control in another way. But identifying the reason that you are so attached to a certain way of being is going to be really important, especially if you feel like that certain way of being is stopping you from stepping into the version of yourself you want to be. I know for me, mine was very much around wanting to control the way that I looked for a really, really long time, and I battled with a lot of disordered eating in that time as well. So that was definitely my attachment to that, and I eventually realized that actually the balance that came with yoga and the more intuitive side of yoga served me so well. I've never felt healthier in my life than when I have just really sank into my feminine energy, but that's very much me. But also just like listened to my body and trusted that I do not need to be absolutely battering myself to feel my best. And different strokes for different folks. Everyone likes different things, but for me, I know that my body feels best with nice long walks and regulating my nervous system regularly and practicing yoga, whether it be power yoga, yin yoga, practicing Pilates, going on runs. That is my preferred form of movement. That is when I feel my best. I love moving my body in that way. You know what? Everything else at the moment isn't for me, and that's completely fine. But I think for you, this is going to be trial and error and just surrounding yourself around the environment you want to become. So practicing more yoga, maybe you start to live by your menstrual cycle, maybe you start living with the moon cycle, maybe you start reading certain yogic texts. I have an entire reading list on my Amazon storefront, so I'm going to link that down below as well. But know that this is not going to happen overnight, and know that also if you're wanting to do yoga teacher training, a lot of this transformation will probably happen on your yoga teacher training. I remember when I was teaching yoga teacher trainings, the amount of people I would have come in who were like CrossFitters or really focused on the gym, and seeing the transformation was honestly like the biggest gift as a teacher. I just loved seeing them just sink into themselves and find more balance and connect to their femininity. Honestly, it was a gift. It was the biggest gift. I think those were my favorite moments as someone who was leading yoga teacher trainings, because they were just so beautiful. The transformations are huge. So also know that that's going to come if you are wanting to do your yoga teacher training as well. Okay, very long video. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed, please do let me know. And with all of this being said, if you feel like you are wanting a little bit more guidance as you build your business as a yoga teacher, you may really love the Yoga Teacher Mentorship, which is my group mentoring program. I have a new sort of group of this starting on the 4th of February in 2024. But if you are feeling called to have some guidance on creating your business, finding your core values, creating ownership of your business and creating ownership of your income, it's going to be a really big focus in this next cohort as well. But also thinking about finding your soul students, creating your dream brand, creating your dream business. Also, if you're already a yoga teacher and you're just wanting to step up into becoming a more established teacher, becoming a teacher who is much more professional and just owns a lot more of their work, rather than maybe selling your gift to everyone else and then having nothing to sort of take from it, this next round of the Yoga Teacher Mentorship is going to be perfect for you. So if you are feeling called for that, I will link it below. And as always, feel free to comment or send me a message on Instagram and ask me any questions you might have. But otherwise, that is everything from me. I am sending you so much love and light. If you want to flow together, I link my online membership below, Soul Shower. But otherwise, that is everything, and I will see you in our next video here on my channel. Bye guys.